All right, so we will start the Architectural Board of Review meeting for January 10th, 2022. First order of business is roll call.
All right, thank you. I can go ahead and take the roll call. So Chair Moore is absent. We have Vice Chair Six.
Here.
Board Member Anderson is also absent at the moment. Board Member Black.
Here.
Board Member Noon.
Here.
Board Member Olson.
Here.
And Board Member Whalen.
And here.
All right, thank you. We have a quorum and it looks like Board Member Anderson may have just joined us.
I'm here.
There she is.
There you are. Welcome.
I'm so sorry.
All right.
All right, so we have a quorum and we will move on to general business. So item A, I've spoken with staff, and because Chair Moore is absent, I think that it would support us all if we postponed election of chair and vice chair until next meeting. And if that, I guess we don't need to vote on that, but that was what we decided to do. So item B, appointment of consent review representatives and subcommittees. And Will, I think that you have organized and have a structure to generate volunteers for next year's consent review.
I would say let's also postpone that until the January 24th meeting so everyone can be in attendance.
Okay. All right. That's, again, I'm sorry. That's what we did decide to do.
So Will, can you send that out if you have something that you've have an idea what you're going to ask us to do, or if there is some tentative assignments, can you send that out? And
sure. That might be discussed at the 24th meeting too, but maybe I can send out some preemptive information before
Mr.
that
Olson,
meeting.
Mr. Olson, there's not been any appointments yet. So I've just, I've been just talking with Will about, how many, what the periods of time, whether it be quarters or thirds of the year and so forth. So no appointments are tentative yet.
okay.
If I do find out some information before that hearing, I will send it out. So,
all right, very good. So item C is public comment. So if there is anybody from the public that is present, please raise your hand and be directed further by staff in regards to speaking.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Six and board members. So if any member of the public would like to speak on general public comment at this time, please click the raise your hand icon and I can call on you. While we wait, I can confirm that we did not receive any general written correspondence. So at this time, I don't see any hands raised, so I'll turn it over back to you, Vice Chair Six.
Thank you, Mary. So we'll move on to next item of general business is approval of the minutes of the Architecture Board Review meeting, full meeting of December 13th, 2021. So do I have a maker of that motion?
I move to accept the minutes as presented for the December 13th.
Mr. Olson. Mr. Olson, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
I can second that.
Thank you, Mr. William. So we have a motion on the floor.
All right, I can go ahead and take a roll call vote. I'll start with Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Then next is the approval of the consent calendar for December 20th, 2021. Can we have that up on the board? Or was that in our packet and have been reviewed? So this, if we can scroll down. This was a small parking lot improvements on De La Vina Street. And the applicant was told to restudy the foot candles of the parking lot surface and to show the photometrics 20 feet beyond the property line. That was item A. Item B was 22 Cannon West Cannon Perdido. And I can't remember. Oh, this was an addition of 6 antennas with 9 antennas on a roof and screening thereof. And it was continued indefinitely with the comments to study different ways to better integrate it into the structure. Do I have a maker of that motion?
I move we accept these minutes.
Thank you,
Second.
Ms. Anderson, second by Olson. We have a motion on the floor.
All right, I can go ahead and take a roll call vote. I'll start with Vice Chair Six,
Yes,
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
all right, moving on. We have approval of the consent calendar for January 10th today. And since nobody's seen this, it's uh, 513 De La Vina was found to lack landscaping adequate landscaping, and was continued. It had some issues with chain link along the fence, and that the elevation should be improved. And it was continued 2 weeks with comments. Now, folks, this was uncomfortable for both. It turned out, it looked at the beginning a consent scaled project, but the further we got into it was a significant issues. So I don't know how we would change the course of this. I think it will still be reviewed on consent. But if you guys can look at it before it comes to consent next time, and I don't know what the legal way for you to put heads up, whether it needs to be, if you have comments or it needs to be seen at full board, I'd appreciate that. I will get in contact with, or staff can get in contact with legal regards to not breaking the Brown Act. But yes, I would appreciate making sure that this could be reviewed at consent as we did. Then the next item
Excuse me,
was,
Chair Six.
yeah,
On that item, if I'd be permitted to make a comment, I know it did not appear that there were any windows to rooms number 11 and 10.
right. It's a very particular type of hotel. And I guess that's, they have found a niche, and that was part of their program. They've had this done. They've had a similar type projects reviewed by Landmarks. I did suggest it in the comments, and you'll see on item 3A that frosted glass French doors could be a way to at least give an impression of outdoor light and so forth. So I think we've handled it, but it would be nice for you to keep it on your radar screen and put up a red flag if you think it needs further look at from the full board.
Thank you.
Then the new item, can we go down to the next item?
Mr. Six,
Yeah,
regarding that item A, couldn't it have been returned to full board rather than to the consent?
well, yes, but I would rather have, and you guys would have been totally unprepared if I had kicked it up. And so I didn't do it. So it's continued 2 weeks, so you have, we'll have a chance to get your input.
Okay,
Item B, 528 Los Olivos. This was a very minor, replacement of a trash area, and it was approved. And C, this was 831 Cliff Drive. This was the apartments on Cliff Drive where there was so much uproar regarding the removal of cypress trees. So we've given this preliminary approval, but it will come back to full board for your review at the next full board, and also give the public an opportunity to fully participate and be fully notified. So that's, do I have a maker of a motion for approval of the consent calendar for January 10th?
move we accept as presented.
Mr. Olson,
Second.
Mr. Black?
Yep.
Motion on the floor.
All right, I can go ahead and take a roll call vote. I'll start with Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes,
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
So next item is announcements, requests by applicants for continuous withdrawals, future item, agenda items and appeals. Does staff have any of those? I guess not. So, and I don't
Actually,
think,
pardon my interruption, Vice Chair Six.
Yeah.
I just want to briefly introduce myself. As you all know, that Irma Unsueta, who is the senior planner, the design review supervisor, retired on December 17th. And my name is Ellen Kokinda, and I am the acting design review supervisor. In the meantime, we do have an open position, or there's a position that has been posted on the city's human resources website that closes on January 18th, who would be taking the place of the design review supervisor. So I'm filling in for the meantime, but I would encourage you to share that job posting with your networks and see if anyone is interested. And I am very pleased to be working with you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen, and I hope that we can find somebody that is willing to work with this group.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last item on general business is subcommittee reports, and I'm not aware of any activity there at this point. So with that, we'll move on to our first item on the agenda. Is 500 James Fowler Road. This is a continued item. And the project consists of reconfiguration of the rental car parking lot and the addition of 3 new remain overnight parking spaces for large commercial aircraft at the Santa Barbara Airport. A large existing hangar and existing parking lot is proposed to be demolished and repaved, along with landscaping, fencing, and lighting alterations. Project received Planning Commission approval for a coastal development permit on December 2nd, 2021. Project design and final approval is requested. Project requires compliance with the project compatibility findings, airport design guidelines, Planning Commission Resolution 013-21, and the project was last reviewed on November 1st, 2020, and staff put up the comments from that meeting.
Excuse me, Vice Chair Six, let me pull those up.
Okay.
I would also like to just, in the meantime, confirm that we have both the attendees there while I do that.
Okay.
So, Mr. Kinsling, I promoted you. Is there anyone else a part of your applicant team that wishes to present today? I think you are muted. Wait, let me get those minutes. One moment. On the screen, we have the minutes.
Can you scan up? I think so. The rest of the members can look at that. So I'm just gonna paraphrase things here. The overall expansion of the parking lot looked acceptable. We wanted to provide additional, and this was landscape screening material upon Moffett Place and around the L-shaped planter to help screen the existing, actually the parking lot. A different tree, Tippewana trees were considered inappropriate, and the board was concerned about the temporary chain link fence and barbed wire, but understand that it's all temporary. And we wanted to see a sample of the proposed fencing and make clear its location and what it looks like. And the board generally found the compatibility analysis findings. So that's what we're looking at. And if we can have our applicant and have the applicant especially address the comments from last time.
Certainly. Good afternoon. My name is Brad Klinzing. I'm the supervising engineer for the airport.
Okay.
I can speak directly to these comments, or we can kind of go through the plan set and answer them as we go, however's more preferable to the board.
Yeah, let's go through the, yeah, I think we need to see how the plans have changed or focus in on where these comments are applicable.
Okay. Yeah, if we can bring the plan set up. So please go to sheet 3. So to reorient everyone, this is at the Santa Barbara Airport, and this is south of the main terminal. So the plan views turned roughly 90 degrees. So it'd be the left side of the page is the north. Across the street from Moffett Place is Goleta Sanitary District. And the dashed lines are showing the limits of disturbance with this project. And the current area has a large hangar that is going to be demolished, as well as some existing aircraft apron space and the rental car operations as far as what we call ready return lot is currently in this location. The roughly midway through the area of disturbance, there's a proposed AOA fence. There's a little annotated call out there. And the AOA essentially divides the airfield side of the project from the public or the land side as we call it. So that's the 8-foot tall double barbed wire fence that delineates those two different zones, if you will. Next sheet, please. Next sheet. Next sheet. So this is a little blow up of the demolition. So it's showing hangar 5 there. So that would be completely going away. Some of those other hatchings are existing planters that we are proposing to infill with concrete. And then our site plan will show you where we have new planters with plantings and irrigation going. But you can move to the next slide. Next slide. Next slide. The hatched area is where permeable concrete is proposed. It's part of our way of complying with stormwater management program of the cities. We can go to the next slide. Next slide. This one just shows again the purple diagonal hatch. That's the airfield side where aircraft will be parking. Those are the remain overnight parking spots. And it allows us to free up the gates a little bit. If an aircraft needs to have certain maintenance or is going to be parked for the night, we can use these locations to help with our airport operations. Next slide. The next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. So here's a site plan showing the permeable concrete, and it also shows the new planters. We've added call outs to the planters showing where the lighting is going to be at. There are roughly, I want to say there's 15 existing lamp posts that we are going to reuse. So we're going to salvage those and reinstall them. I have photos of those towards the end of the document of this plan set that we can take a look at. There are also walkway bollards that are existing that we plan to salvage and reinstall. It'll be going towards where those ADA parking stalls are located, and the ADA symbol, that walkway there on the western side of this screen. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. I want to say it's slide 26 is the next one that's got new information on it. Yeah, so here's a blow up of the AOA fence that's dividing the airfield side and the public side. So it is an 8-foot tall chain link fence. The base of it's going to be on K-rail essentially, and the fence is going to have some of it is going to be with the privacy screen, which is the cut sheet that's shown on the lower left side, which is a 80% blockage. But think of it like a tennis court mesh. And then a portion of the fence is going to have the HDPE slat inserts, as the cut sheet on the lower right there is showing. And to remind the board that the height and the barbed wire of the fencing is a requirement of the airport security plan. It's in coordination with TSA. We also have to have a certain amount of clearance before and behind the fence so that personnel can adequately patrol the gate. So any opportunity for plantings near the fence is not allowed as part of that security plan. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. And as far as the landscaping goes, we did remove the Tijuana trees. We have, wherever the Tijuanas were called for, we replaced them with a mixture of the Australian willow and the Swan Hill olive. We did look at the heights of the willow and the olive, and we are good with those as far as any height obstructions. Preferably for us that we would prefer no trees, but we understand that we've got to have a certain aesthetic with parking lots. And so we feel that these two trees will provide the aesthetics and will function properly for the airport. We also took another look at the screenings, that L-shaped planter, as noted in the minutes. There are several existing trees there. You can kind of make those out on this sheet here along Moffett Place. They are deciduous trees and rather large. And it is of our opinion that there is adequate screening in place. I don't know if we have the ability to look up Google Maps to kind of get a real-time look at it or not, but it would provide benefit if we can do that. If not, I can continue with this presentation. Maybe we can look at it afterwards.
Mr. Killings?
Yes.
Did you provide photos, context photos that might have shots of that?
Not specifically of that planter, no.
I think that's what we were, okay. I wonder where we got our information last time in regards to the existing planning.
Yeah, there are some old photos from a previous presentation. If we bring those up, I can walk through those as well.
Maybe you should continue your presentation and give staff time to sort that out.
Okay.
Is that possible, Mr. Russell?
Yes.
Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, and also on this slide in that L-shaped planter towards the Moffett Place and the exit of the Terminal Loop Road. So basically the northernmost part of that L-shaped planter is where the existing irrigation meter and backflow is at. It's a 2-inch line. It is already used to irrigate the existing planters, so we will plan to tap into that and augment the irrigation to the new planters that we're proposing.
Mm-hmm.
Next slide, please. Next slide. And so these are some additional photos that I've added to the plan sheet. Photo 1 there shows the existing black vinyl mesh that's out there. It's that roughly 80% blockage. And then photo 2 is kind of a close-up of that, so you can see a little more detail on that. Photo 3 was an alternate type of mesh that's used on the north side of the terminal. It's a much more robust. It's not a plastic, it's a metal mesh. And with this project being far, on the south side of the terminal and away from this type of fencing, we didn't feel it was appropriate to propose that type of mesh screening at this location. And then also on that north side of the terminal, there is this usage of slats. So that is something that we are carrying over in this project.
If Mr. Klingsing, can you describe photograph number 6? Or it seems, I guess it's in the questions, but it seems that the green screen on that is bordered by, it is a very pristine in its border, but photo 1 is kind of rough at the edges and kind of dropped in an inconsistent way. Can you explain the difference in those two?
Certainly. So photo 1 is in our current location of the project, the South Field area. The photo 6 is on the north side of the terminal. And so if you're familiar with the area, it's between the historic terminal and like where the ticketing counter check-in is at.
So on the left side of photo 6 is actually the material in photo number 3?
Correct.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Yep, and 4 is the close-up of the product on the right of photo 6.
Yep, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Photo 5, there was some discussion at our last presentation about what we're calling the Sallyport wall, and that's the plastered wall that does not have barbed wire on top of it. And so this is the AOA fence. This is an existing AOA fence that is intersecting with the plastered wall. And so as part of our project, we are proposing to add double-armed barbed wire to the top of that plastered wall to bring us into compliance with our airport security plan. Photos 7, 8, and 9 are of the existing lighting throughout the rental car parking lot. And so those are the fixtures that we were gonna salvage and reinstall. I believe that is the run through of the plans.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if Mr. Russell, if we had some of those photos of the site. Yeah, you can. Yeah, next slide. Next slide. Next slide. So this starts showing the area that's to be redeveloped. So you can see there's a deciduous tree directly in front of it with some of the low ground cover. And all this was put in as part of the terminal when it was constructed in 2013. And you can see the walkway too, where the crosswalk's coming across. Those are those bollards that we are looking to salvage and reinstall. And then you can also see some of the lights, like there's the double-armed light on the left-hand side, as well as the scattered double-armed light fixtures behind that deciduous tree in front of us.
So Mr. Klingsing, is the where the arrows are pointing, that's the outward bend of the C shape that we were concerned about the screening?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
Correct, yep. Yeah, so that'd be on your way exiting the terminal area.
All right.
Next slide,
Yeah.
please. And so this is almost if you're on Moffett Place Road and looking back towards the airfield. And so the C-shaped or the L-shaped planter that we're looking at, that's just starting on the left-hand side of this photo. So you can see some of the existing trees there, as
Yeah.
well as the shrubs that are going to be there. That tree that's in front of the double-armed, that is to remain. And then next slide, please. Next slide. So the bottom photo, this is would be the south end of that L-shaped planter.
Okay.
So that road on the right there, that's Moffett Place. The hangar in the middle of that, that's what's to be demolished. So everything that's in that planter on the right-hand side of the screen would be staying.
Yeah.
And so as far as being on Moffett Place and looking towards the new proposed parking, it was our opinion that the existing landscaping there would be sufficient.
So, Mr. Klingsing, is that there's the left-hand side of this bottom is not in the scope of your work. Does that change? Is that?
The planner doesn't change, but like you can kind of make out the ADA stall, or there's like 4 parking spots up
Yeah.
against that white building.
Yeah.
That is getting redeveloped.
Okay. So there's still this driveway that's right front and center of us. That's still the same configuration, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then we can check the next few slides to see if they've had any other views. Next slide. No, that's further down the road, so that's not.
All right. I think that does it.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Klingsing?
Nothing from me. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that great presentation. So with that, I will open up the meeting to for public comment on this specific project. If you will raise your hand as directed by screen and further directed by staff.
All right, yes, thank you, Vice Chair Six and board members. If any member of the public would like to speak on this item, please click on the raise hand icon and I can call on you. While we wait, I can confirm that we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. So at this time, I still don't see any raised hands, so I'll turn it over back to you, Vice Chair Six.
All right, thank you, Mary. So we will bring it back to the board and for questions.
I have a question.
Mr. Olson.
Can we go back to the site plan? I'd like to have you show us where on the AOA fence, which part of it will have the mesh and which part will have the slats.
Certainly, I think page. So yeah, if you want to zoom in a little bit, please. So where it says proposed AOA fence, that is where the black vinyl mesh would be at. Right of the proposed AOA fence, where it kind of zigzags down to the bottom of the page, that's where the slats would be at.
I'm sorry, I don't see that zigzag.
So you see where Atlantic Aviation is at, the building there?
Yes.
So as the fence line runs south of that. Yep, and continue all the way down. That's the section that would be slats.
Oh, okay. And the lot, I'm sorry, Mr. Olson, I'm grandstanding you. But the logic of that transition?
The mesh is something as far as level of privacy for our tenants, if you will. Atlantic Aviation is what we call a fixed space operator. So they are a tenant, and as part of some of their clientele or their operations, there is a level of privacy that they request. And so the fact that we have existing mesh on site and a mixture of slats, it was something that we're proposing to provide that for our tenant.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Olson. Excuse me.
Could we go to the site plan, landscape site plan? I've now looking for a note that says bioretention area by others. And I believe that's in the L-shaped planter. In this case, who is the others?
So there is an existing drainage features in that L-shaped. But I'll need to clear up the by others there, because we need to make sure that it says either existing to remain or what's proposed. And Mr. Russell, I don't know, is Melvin or Pierce Melvin, is he on the list of attendees? He's our consultant. He might be able to answer that question for us here.
I do not see Mr. Melvin in the attendees list.
Is there a requirement for bioretention in the L-shaped planter?
I do not have that answer, sir. I would need to check with my consultant.
Okay. I have another question about the L-shaped planter. We have, I think many of us have suggested that the L-shaped planter needed some help with shielding the parking lot. And I think what you're saying is you don't think so. Am I right about that?
Correct.
Okay. I think you've also said that one of the ways to help that area might be by extending the irrigation line into that area. Is that true?
There's already irrigation there in that L-shaped.
Okay. And it's,
so we would just be reusing that existing irrigation.
I see. So perhaps you could give us the rationale, your rationale as to why you would disagree with us about the need for additional landscaping there.
Certainly. When I'm on Moffett Place or I'm exiting the Terminal Loop Road, and I look towards where the hangar's at or where the rental car parking spots are going to be, to me, the existing trees and the shrubs that are in that planter already provide a level of screening. And looking at the short-term parking, which is directly in front of the terminal, it is even more wide open than this area. So just kind of taking a holistic view of the terminal area, it seems like this has an adequate level of screening, in my opinion, and in our consultant's opinion.
So this is just a difference of opinion here. Okay. That's all my questions for now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Olson. Others?
Yeah.
Mr. Black.
Yeah, in that same vein, it would have been nice to have your landscape architect here, because I would have liked to have him answer, or at least tell us what existing planting is in that planter, such that you don't feel that any additional material is necessary. I noticed too that in that more vertical portion of the L shape, it looks like they did add some additional material. It looks like Baccharis, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm reading your, and so I'm wondering, is that new planting? It appears that it is, and I'm just wondering if in fact, if there's no need for it, why did they put some in there? And when I looked at the plants, or on the plant schedule, there are like 7 Baccharis plants shown there, or at least on the list. And then up above along Moffett Place too, there's existing, it says existing landscape to remain on either side of that exit out of the parking lot onto Moffett. And I'm not clear what's there such that you could justify not having any screening there. But you know, if your landscape architect was here and he said, oh no, well, we have Cape Rush and we have this and that's going to provide it. But you know, your guy's not here. So I still think that it's not adequate on the ground level as far as shrubs are concerned to provide, you know, the kind of screening for parking lots that we expect. So unless there's somebody here to say, well, we have this, that, and the other species, and that should be adequate. But there's no, you know, I don't have photographs of this area necessarily, and or anybody else to tell us specifically what is there to justify no additional planting. Those are my comment or my questions.
Okay.
Well, Mr. Black, if we could, perhaps we could go back to the one picture he did show us of that L-shaped planter area. I think it might emphasize your point because there is a picture and I can't see the justification for the applicant's point on that.
There you go. Bingo.
Mr. Russell, are you able to see the Planning Commission presentation that's also on Acela?
I might be able to pull that up. Let me take a look.
Because there are additional photos on that presentation as well that might help.
But could we just comment, isn't this a picture of the south side of the L-shaped planter?
Yeah, the ocean side, yes.
Yes.
And so what we're looking at is a lot of bare ground there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And
Okay,
so
I think we're still in the question phase. I have a feeling that there's going to be a few comments on this issue. So can we move on to other questions? Anybody else? I have a singular question. In your photographs of both photographs and diagrams of your screen fencing, can we go to that sheet? And number one, you know, the first photograph, it looks like, you know, the perimeter of the screening is very haphazard and ill-fitted, and it's high above the ground. And then in your diagrams even, if we can go to those diagrams, I don't know what sheet it was, for the proposed
26, I believe.
Yes. So these again show there's 2 examples here in that little box from fence screen manufacturer. One shows the screen being somewhat well, it's a diagram, but somewhat tight and regular and going all the way or almost all the way to top and bottom rail and posts. And then we have the black diagram, which shows, you know, it looks like cables stretching and bare bits of chain link and so forth, which would kind of signify the photo that we saw. Which is it, and do we have examples of this screen being neatly and perimetered and all the way to the ground? Is that what's going on there? Is that the proposal?
So the intent is with the way the blue mesh is shown, where it's tight to the posts and the top rails. The photo one that I had shown as it was existing is mainly to show you the level of privacy or the blockage of the mesh.
Okay. Very good. So I think we're done with our,
No, I have one more question.
yes, Mr. Olson.
So as to the double arm barbed wire requirement, could you again specify what is the requirement that you have to deal with about the installation of the double arm barbed wire? So the reason I'm asking this question is that this isn't something that we would not approve in other projects. We would say, no, we don't think this is appropriate. This doesn't fit with what we expect in Santa Barbara. And I think what you're saying is, no, there's no choice here in the matter. And so that's a requirement. And so I just want to verify that.
Yes, Board Member Olson, you are correct. So Santa Barbara Airport works with TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, and we have a airport security plan with them that we propose types of fences and different types of security operations that the city has to obtain. And so that plan, it shows us having an 8-foot tall fence with the double barbed wire arms. So if we deviate from anything like that, then it has to go through the TSA for that approval. And it's standardized moving forward. The airport's position is to go with the double armed barbed wire. You might see some old relic fences around the airfield, but those are being slated to be removed and replaced with this current standard of what we're showing.
So, yeah, Mr. Olson, are you complete then?
Thank you.
And that, I think Mr. Olson's question is very interesting. You know, we look at photograph number 6, the stuff on the right, on the left, aren't those spikes going up above the top railing considered a security barrier with spikes, and is that a TSA approved solution?
That
so,
one
and so more the general idea is there alternates that the security company would have in their library, perhaps even existing library of acceptable things. I mean, you know, if this was TSA around the Capitol building, they would find something other than loose strand barbed wire in front of important structures. So I think Mr. Olson's question is very apropos.
I can't speak to when that section of the spiked fence was installed in photo 6. All I can say is that moving forward, the standard that we have with TSA is the double arm barbed wire.
So they have no other solutions?
I don't think he said that. I think he said that he thinks it would be difficult to obtain a different solution. Is that correct?
It was something that could be discussed with TSA. I will say we haven't done that in the last few years, just because we have made that plan of this is what our fencing should be moving forward. I won't say that it's impossible, but if that's something that the board would like us to investigate further, absolutely, we can look into that further.
I don't mean to belabor this, but perhaps you can put this in context. Is this type security top used in greater context in the overall plan of the new parts of the airport, like on the east side? I mean, is this already everywhere? Everywhere?
Yes, as you're driving down Fairview, by the runway end and north side of the airfield, the double armed, you'll see the double armed 8-foot tall fence.
That's when, what is it? Fairview runs east and west?
Fairview runs north and south in
North and
Hollister.
south, yeah.
West and east, yeah.
And then you turn the corner, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then is this fence with its security between the long-term parking and the runway?
Yep, there's a fence there as well. It has the double armed.
Okay. All right, so with that, we'll open it up for comments from the board. I think we're in comments. Do I see anybody raise their hand? Yes, David.
Well, again, I don't want to belabor it either, but I'm just not convinced that what's been described to us as existing landscape is adequate screening. I mean, from the photographs, frankly, I wouldn't mind if the applicant came back with photographs showing specifically those areas that they think, you know, provide adequate screening. I just haven't seen it, and you know, and I would like to. Perhaps I should have gone out there myself, perhaps, but I was hoping the landscape architect would be here to at least describe what is in those planters that he feels does the job, but not to be right now. So, so I'd really like more information about that, because what I've seen proposed is existing to remain, and that's supposed to suffice. So I just not clear that it will do the job based on what I've seen so far.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair or Vice
Yeah.
Chair Six, I
Yeah.
do have the photos from the PC presentation if that
Great.
is helpful.
Take a look.
Okay,
I'll scroll on through.
Yeah, slides 6 and 8, Mr. Russell, those are the two that I had in mind. So that bottom photo is if you were on Moffett Place looking towards that hangar building, you can see through the trees there.
Okay.
so Mr. Klingsing, is that first photo, is that, so to speak, the elbow of the C planter that we're talking about?
Pretty close to the elbow. You probably have another 10 feet before you get to 10 to 15 feet till you get to Moffett Place.
So this here now is the north-south extent of that L shape, right?
It'd be
Right,
yeah, or even a little north
right
of that.
there, right?
Yeah,
And the second is the elbow. And that's the elbow.
yes.
And your plans show new planting in that area,
With the trees to remain.
the trees, but doesn't your plan show new planting in this elbow area?
Just in the little, yeah, the hinge point of that elbow.
Right where we see it, right here, yeah, okay. And then do we have another of the, the western portion of this?
Mr. Russell, I believe my consultant's able to speak of the landscaping, Pierce Melvin. Is he on there?
So this particular presentation doesn't show us that one photo that we had up the exit drive, correct? That was, as you pointed out, the handicap parking.
I just
Yeah.
promoted Mr. Melvin.
Okay.
Good afternoon. This is Pierce Melvin. I work with Kimley Horn. So we were the consultants on this. And while I'm not the landscape architect, I have a landscape architect that works for us. I'm the engineer who's signing and sealing the plans. But I can speak a little bit about it if you have any questions.
We did
David?
have a question on the bioretention area.
Yeah.
So you're looking at the landscape plans here that shows some shrubbery that we're enhancing up there on top of the existing. So what Brad mentioned about the existing trees, we do not want to touch any of the trees there. We're going to leave them. So the shrubs that are going in there are kind of like enhancing the ground cover a little bit. We are trying to use that as a mechanism of treating some of the flow coming off the site. Now, the original intent was we were going to pave all of this with impervious pavement, but it's come back that we can't do that. So all of the pavement that's going in here is what's the permeable concrete. So the runoff that would come off this pavement is not going to be excessive, but it will still head to that kind of corner landscaped area that we've enhanced a little bit of the shrubs. So if you see in there right now, you'll see there's a kind of, I would call it a gravel swale that takes the flow ultimately to the storm drain. And we will be trying to maintain that ultimate drainage pattern.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
So I guess we still haven't answered, the question of like, in and among this existing landscape that I see on the vertical aspect of the L shape and then the horizontal one up along Moffett Place where it says existing landscape, I'm still not clear what that landscape is. There's trees, I understand those are going to be preserved, that's fine. But what's on the, I just want to be clear that on the ground plane that there's material there that's at least, you know, say 30 inches high, that's going to block the view of the parking lot. Pretty simple. But I'm not seeing anything on there that convinces me that that's the case. So that's why I was hoping that somebody would, the landscape architect would be there and say, well, okay, we have this, this, and this here. The photographs are not totally clear to me. I don't know, and there's some that suggest that in fact there are no screen shrubs in some of those areas, but am I wrong?
No, I would think if I'm looking at the area, excuse me, that goes back into the site away from Moffett, which was, I believe, the second photograph that you were looking at.
Yes.
I would not class it as having 30-inch of screening, continuous screening landscape along there. Our intention was not to touch that section of landscaping. That's why we just called it out as it existing. We're not intending to go in there, but yeah, I would say there is not continuous landscape screening along there.
And what about,
that was,
thank you. And what about up there, that existing landscaping along Moffett?
So I'd say that's a little bit more extensive landscaping there. I would say maybe it's not that far off continuous screening at that point. Again, our intention was not to go up there and enhance it so it was 100% screening, at least not originally. But I think on the Moffett Place, if I'm standing on Moffett and looking on the site, yeah, that landscaping is a little bit more dense, if you like.
Okay.
Thank you for that answer. I think that clarifies things. So any other questions or comments?
I have just a couple quick comments.
Yes, Mr. Noon.
Chair Six, if I could. It seems the applicant, based on the comments from last time, was given a couple conditions that were of points of interest, mostly to the board, and both of those revolved around screening. One was fence screening and one was landscape screening. I think, I feel they've adequately addressed the fence screening. We may differ on how that tops out with security, but I think, I don't want to speak for the board, but I think we can move on with that portion of it. Where my concern is this, the parking lot screening. They were asked to come back with a solution, and I don't know. It appears that we haven't really gotten any response to that, other than we think it's adequate. If we were, as it's already been mentioned, I'm just reiterating what other board members have said, but they haven't presented a case to prove that it does screen in any way. We just haven't seen what it does. So it seems to me that only half of those conditions, as far as those two pieces of screening, have been addressed. So I guess I wouldn't be in support of approving this as submitted.
All right, thank you, Mr. Noon. Anybody else? My own comments then would be, given that even though it's unfortunate that the double-armed security barbed wire is, a standard feature already introduced throughout the project, unfortunately, and I think that we need to let that issue go as part of the nature of the beast. As far as that goes, I thoroughly agree that the photos provided with in regards to the landscape screening, it just seems to be in reverse. They've augmented landscaping at the elbow of this C shape, where most looks fairly adequate, and have not introduced a new planting on the wings, the legs of the C, and especially the little portion westerly most on the other side of the driveway. So I would propose that we could move this to a consent calendar item addressing the landscape to be more, the augment of the landscape to be more appropriately dispersed or located, in order to provide what the ordinance asks for is, consistent 30-inch high screening landscape from public ways to parking spaces.
Mr. Vice Chair, I would suggest too, if in fact we direct them to come back on consent, that they bring photographs of these specific areas and then a plan that reflects what the needs are. So if they show a photograph that has adequate screening, then the plan wouldn't have to provide more planting. But if the photographs show a need for screening, then their plan should reflect that. Great.
Do you want to make a motion then, Mr. Black?
Yeah, sure. So I'd make a motion to continue this to the consent calendar.
Indefinite continuance.
Indefinite continuance to consent, and provide, well, I should say, so I think we found that what's being proposed as a whole, the project is acceptable except for the issues surrounding the landscape screening. So that said, we want to continue this indefinitely to consent, to come back and provide us with some understanding of what the screening needs are and what they would propose to augment to meet the needs for screening, and in fact bring photographs of these specific areas to justify their decisions.
Great. Okay. And if I might be, I'll second that. And if we could generate a first comment that the proposal, the layout and the materials and lighting, the project is deemed acceptable. And number two, that the landscape issues are to be addressed. So Mary, are we anywhere near to a motion that you can reduce to logic and repeat to us?
I think so. So I have that the motion is to continue the project indefinitely to consent with the following comments. Number one, the project as proposed is acceptable except for the issues surrounding the landscape screening. And number two, provide an understanding of what the screening needs are and what would be augmented, and provide photographs of what is currently existing in order to understand the screening needs.
Sounds good to me, David.
Yep, I accept that.
All right.
A question for discussion.
Yes, Lauren.
Mr. Black, do you want to include, you mentioned something about 30 inches high and being continuous. Do you want to include that in their findings?
Yeah, we could include that.
It's just a question, yeah.
Well, I'm going to leave it up to the landscape architect to, make the appropriate selection, but I would think that we would want a minimum of 30 inches.
Okay. I think we should include that in our motion.
Okay, acceptable to me.
And Mr. Black, I know everybody understands this, but I think that we should also add to the motion that it's the understanding by the board that the fabric screening will be installed to the fence per the left-hand side of the diagram on sheet. Help me here. Can we go to that sheet with the diagrams?
Yeah, I believe it was sheet 26.
If that's it for sure, then just, yeah, so that the screening would be installed per the left-hand example of the diagrams provided on sheet 26. David, is that okay with you as motioner?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Yes, okay, it's okay with me. So we have a motion.
Call for the question.
All right, I can go ahead and take a roll call vote. I'll start with Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
No.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Olson, would you care to reiterate your no?
Sure. Several reasons. First of all, I understand that we may have to bend our rules in order to comply with the regulations imposed on this project because of airport regulations. But I'm still saying we're going to have to say that in the compatibility analysis, that the design of this project is compatible with Santa Barbara characteristics, and double arm barbed wire isn't. And so the applicant did say they would investigate further. We haven't asked him to do that. So that's one reason why I'm opposed to that. The other reason is that I still don't feel like we've heard who the others are with a bioretention situation on the L-shaped planning area. And so those are two of the reasons that I oppose it.
Thank you very much. So we have voted and explained, and so we can move on. Thank you, applicants, for your great presentation and understanding. So next item is 8 Ocean View Avenue. This is a new item for concept review only. The project consists of a voluntary lot merger of certain parcel numbers. I have to move my screen here. And demolition of all structures on those 2 lots, including a single family residence, detached garage, and 2 accessory buildings. 1 fruit tree and 3 palm trees are also proposed to be removed. 1 single family residence, 2 duplexes, and 2 detached special accessory dwelling units are proposed for a total of 7 units, 5 which are considered primary units and 2 which are accessory units. 14 uncovered vehicle parking spaces, including 2 electrical charging spaces, 7 bike lockers, and a trash enclosure are also proposed. Staff hearing officer review and approval is required for a coastal development permit to allow the proposed development in the non-appealable jurisdiction of the city coastal zone. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. And the project requires compliance with project compatibility findings and urban design guidelines. So before we have presentation, is the staff representative here or planner for the project to explain our responsibilities before this review and approval by the staff hearing officer. Nobody's willing to come up with, do we get support by staff or should we just?
Yes, Keith Riviera has been promoted. So Mr. Riviera, you have the ability to turn on your webcam and audio and speak.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, maybe Keith can explain.
Yes, I think, the primary purpose here today is we want to get kind of a confirmation from the board on the basic site planning and architectural direction of the project, and particularly for the site planning so we can proceed with our stormwater and landscape design and, then get our completeness from planning to move forward to the staff hearing officers. So, I think this is really primarily a check-in on the site planning and architectural direction for those purposes.
Okay, so we won't hear this. We'll hear this now and then it'll go to staff hearing officer, then it'll return to us for further in detail preliminary review.
I would assume so, yes. And
okay.
To make one correction to the project description, there's actually 8 surface uncovered parking spaces and 6 covered parking spaces, just to clarify that.
All right, thanks. So you can proceed with your presentation if we can get your graphics on the screen.
If we could go to page 2, please. So I just want to walk you through the site and context photos. So up on the upper right there, we have a context aerial, and the project site is located there in the center. It's at the southeast corner of Ocean View Avenue and Old Coast Highway. So you can see from the aerial that the context is kind of a mix in scales of buildings. It's primarily all multifamily residential, and it goes from some larger footprint buildings to some smaller grain projects. So this neighborhood is kind of just to the east of the intersection with Salinas Street.
Can I interrupt you for the sake of flow here? Can you zoom in on a photograph that what would it be? The east property line property is what the nature of that is?
That one right there, yes. If that is a multifamily project, it's some apartments that are basically in 4 different buildings around a central auto court, and I have a image in the streetscape that'll show you the street image of that.
Okay. You want to show
Again,
us?
the context is primarily multifamily.
So can you zoom into that street? Oh, is it right there?
Yeah, I'll get to that now. So if we look at the context photos in the middle of the page there, and that correct right there, the view of Old Coast Highway on the north side. So this is the streetscape along Old Coast Highway, going from left to right. We're going from west to east. So there's currently a multifamily modern townhouse project under construction directly opposite our site. Then there's the intersection with Ocean View Avenue. And then in the middle of that panorama is the project site. And there we have what's been deemed a historic stone retaining wall right at the public right-of-way. And also note that along that stretch of Old Coast Highway, there's no parkway, so it's pretty narrow with just the sidewalk on a busy street. And then just to the right of our project site is that multi-family project that you were pointing out, Mr. Six, and that's the streetscape of that. Again, it's broken up into 4 different buildings, and then immediately to the east of that is a 2-story kind of 60s modern apartment building. If we could pan over a little bit to the right there. Yeah, right there. Correct. So that's the project side of Old Coast Highway. The next panorama below that is the south side of the street. It's basically a number of 2-story stucco apartment buildings. There are some original 1-story residences right at the street with additional multifamily units behind them. Then the panorama below that is on Ocean View Avenue on the east side of the street where our project's located. And again, going from left to right, kind of down the hill towards the intersection, there's a wood-clad townhouse project, a pair of single-family 1-story residences immediately to the north of our project. And then our site takes the remaining portion of the block down to the intersection. It's kind of hard to see much because it's got a lot of overgrown plant material all around the perimeter, but there's a existing garage that's right on the property line there on the left. The existing residence is in the middle. It's a 1-story stucco building. And then again, just kind of overgrown landscape down to the corner. And then the bottom panorama, if we could go down, please. Yeah, is the opposite side, the west side of Ocean View. So again, there's the 2-story townhouse project that's under construction, a series of kind of 60s apartment buildings, another lone single family house, and then more multifamily buildings as you move up the street. So that's kind of the context. If we could zoom out to the upper left portion of the page, these are the site photos. So the upper four are the northern parcel of the two lots. This is where the detached garages, which is on the right image. And then there's a series of accessory structures, storage type buildings there in the second to the left photo. Then the two rows of photos down below are the on-site photos of the existing residents to be removed. It's pretty much in uninhabitable condition at the moment. It's been abandoned for quite a while. Does have this kind of old wood pergola trellis there on the left. And then the bottom row is just kind of a panorama of the lower portion of the site that just kind of shows the overgrown landscape that sort of shrouds the site from the neighborhood. So that's the the photo imagery. If we could go to the next page, please. So this is just some kind of supplementary material about the context, but I won't go into detail, but the comparison on the upper right-hand side just looks at the surrounding uses, heights, and lot coverages, and it shows that our site's right in there with the context as far as the use and the height, and it's actually on the lower end of the lot coverage at 20%. And to give you sort of a measuring stick, it's about a 0.3 FAR for the site. And if you look at the figure ground study there in the middle of the page, I think that kind of bears that out. The project's shown in the darker hatch. And as you can see, the scale and grain of what we're proposing kind of fits right in with the surroundings. Down below, if you could zoom in a bit on the site plan diagram, I just want to walk you through the logic of the site planning. So the main idea here is to take the program and to break it up into smaller pieces. So we have a series of smaller buildings rather than one large one. And the other major generator is having all the access, both pedestrian and auto, from Ocean View Avenue. And it's obviously the less trafficked street. We avoid the heavy traffic of Old Coast, and we can not disturb that historic retaining wall that's along the right-of-way there. So we have our parking on the northern side. This gives us a generous setback to our single family neighbor to the north. From that, there's a central pedestrian paseo that generates through the middle of the site with a common open space to the east. And then that's defined by the various buildings that surround it. We've kept a generous setback and landscape buffer to the traffic along Old Coast at the south. And then all the pedestrian access, as I said, is from Ocean View on the left there through a series of door yards that create kind of a transition space from the public street to the entries of the units. And all the units have private open space on grade in kind of fenced rear yards, which are those kind of smaller circles adjacent to the units. And then the last thing on this page I just want to touch on quickly is on the upper left-hand corner. That just tries to visually describe sort of the architectural direction of the project. And that's taking kind of traditional Spanish Revival elements like simple kind of rectangular massing, stucco masses, awnings, metal balconies, trellises, tiles, and transforming them to kind of a more modern take on it, to update it and to fit in with some of the modern context, particularly the townhouse project across the street. So if we could go to page 4, please. So this is just the existing topography. You can see that, we're dropping about 12 feet from north to south over about 240 feet of length. The hatched buildings are all being removed, and there's a few kind of stray palms and fruit trees on site that will also be removed. And those are shown as dotted. So we go to the next page, please. So here's the site plan showing how that concept diagram kind of plays out, and I'll walk you through it kind of from north to south. So again, we have the auto access off of Ocean View as far away from the intersection as we can get. Along the northern edge, we have 8 surface parking spaces that again create this setback to our single family neighbor there. On the eastern edge, we have our utility functions. So there's the trash enclosure, bike parking lockers, and space for an electrical transformer. Then the southern edge of the parking lot are 6 covered spaces that would be in an open carport. And from that carport then is our central pedestrian paseo shown with the hatched paving. Immediately adjacent to the carport are 2 one-story ADUs. And then as you work your way south, there's the common open space on the right. And that's flanked by 2 two-story duplex buildings there. And then on the corner, we have a standalone townhouse that kind of acknowledges the corner by being a standalone piece and with its siding geometry reflecting the street intersection there. And then the southern edge, that's our landscape buffer, retaining that existing stone wall. And along the left side there would be then the pedestrian entries off the sidewalk, and they would lead either directly to unit entry areas or to that, linking up to that central paseo there down towards building 1. And then those would again create this transition space with some low fenced door yards at the entries. To the left is just the upper level plan of the site, just shows the 1-story massing to the north, and then how on the upper level of the townhouse buildings, we're using varying projecting bay windows and Juliet balconies to provide variation to the mass of the building. And you'll see that in the imagery. We go to the next sheet, please. Just the roof plan. Carport would just have a simple low slope shed roof. The units would all have parapeted low slope roofs, and those would be punctuated by those square little masses in the roof. And those are kind of faux chimneys that would have clear story lighting to provide light and ventilation to the circulation spaces of the second floor. Next page, please. Zoom back a little bit. So the unit plans, the townhouses all have open plan, kind of great room, first floors, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths upstairs. And again, the second floor plans here kind of demonstrate the use of the varying projecting bay windows. And then the ADU plan is in the upper right, pretty straightforward, just having the utility spaces to the north adjacent to the carports. Next page. So here's some project imagery. If we could kind of zoom in on the top image. Thank you. So here's just an aerial overall view. It shows the basic breakup of the massing around the central open space, the use of the freestanding unit at the corner to kind of acknowledge that, and then using the parking as a buffer zone to our single family neighbor to the north. And if we could scroll down, please. And I'll just walk you around the site kind of clockwise in these views. Starting in the left there, that's a view looking down the street on Ocean View Avenue. So on the left-hand side of the image is the trellis-like carport structure, the 1-story ADU, and then the 2-story duplex. And you can see kind of the varying profile and massing that the project has. this image shows the kind of low screened door yards at the unit entries and the use of trellises at the unit entries too, to provide kind of a spatial transition from the sidewalk. And scroll to the right, please. Here's a view from the corner looking back up the street. Again, kind of the massing stepping with the site as it goes down the hill, the varying profiles. And this illustrates too the kind of secondary architectural elements, the awnings, the trellises, the Juliet balconies, and some tile insets that we're using to give scale and detail to the buildings. When we go down, please. So the right-hand image is a view of the corner across from Old Coast, looking up the hill. There's our existing sandstone wall we're retaining, and that kind of standalone unit there at the corner. And on the left-hand side, this is as you're moving east on Old Coast Highway. That would be the landscape buffer area there, retaining the historic wall, and the use of the bay windows to kind of bookend and frame the view up the central Paseo open space from Old Coast. And if we go to the next page. So here's the two-dimensional elevations of all that. So the upper image is along Ocean View, and I think this really shows how the massing builds from the open parking to the one-story carport and ADU to the two-story townhomes that step down the hill. Again, the use of all the secondary architectural elements to break up the facades and add scale and detail. Also proposing a mix of material on the site fences that would be a combination of stucco walls and wood fences to, again, just provide some variety of color material at the pedestrian level. South elevation, that's along Old Coast. And again, those two projecting bay windows that kind of provide the bookends to looking up that central open Paseo space. Number three, the north elevation, that just illustrates the kind of trellis-like carport on that side of the project. And then number four, the east elevation, just shows kind of the continuation of the same architectural treatment and detailing on that side of the project, including the on the left-hand side there, those would be the backside at the private open spaces of those units. So those are the elevations.
Sure, Chair.
Next last
Yeah.
sheet. Just wanted to let you know we've gone over that 15-minute presentation
Okay.
timer.
Yeah, Mr. Riviera, if you can wrap it up.
Yeah, just that's pretty much it. I mean, just kind of show the last sheet. That's just the elevations within the project, and just shows the continuation of the architecture within the project itself. So that's it in a nutshell. And again, we're hoping to get affirmation on our site planning so that we can proceed with all the stormwater and landscape and further the design along.
All right, thank you for a very thorough presentation. At this juncture, I will open it up to public comment. Anybody who wishes to speak on this specific item, please follow this directions on the screen and further directed by staff.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Six and board members. If any member of the public would like to speak on this item, please click the raise your hand icon and I will call on you. While we wait, I can confirm that we did not receive any written correspondence for this item. And I still don't see any hands raised, so I'll turn it over back to you, Vice Chair Six.
All right, thank you, Mary. So we'll bring it back to the board for questions. Do I see any hands for questions?
Got one quick
Yes,
question.
David, Mr. Noon.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. It was very thorough. If we could go back to the presentation, I just had a real quick question. I'm in support of the project. I did want to ask the reasoning behind the program-wise, putting the single-story units so deep in the property and not closer to the front.
Well, again, I think context-wise, our immediate two neighbors to the north are one-story, single-family dwellings, and it seemed like the two-story mass was more appropriate on the heavily trafficked Old Coast Highway, particularly since right on the opposite corner, right across the street from Ocean View, there's a similar scaled two-story townhouse project that's under construction.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Yes, Miss Anderson.
Did you study locating the common open space along Ocean View Avenue?
Not particularly, because it seemed like from an urban design standpoint, you really wanted to have the building mass of the street to define the street edge and have the open space more internal to the project and more kind of private. And just from kind of a site security standpoint, then this kind of creates more territoriality over the open space by having, the kind of the eyes and ears of the tenants overlooking it.
Okay. And then can you,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I had a couple more questions. Sorry. Can you walk us through the elevation changes from the parking lot down to Old Coast Highway?
Sure. I think that would be, let's see, 2 more sheets. There we go. Next sheet, I think, would show the elevation. Let's see. Yeah. So if we could zoom in on that. So going from left to right, we have some low kind of screening walls at the parking lots. The most left edge there would be the surface parking spaces. At the end of the drive aisle there, that trellis-like structure is the refuse enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the carport that again would be more trellis-like in appearance. And to the right of that is the ADU unit, one of those in 1 story. And then the first, or actually building 3 of the townhomes, that would be a duplex there. And then at the far right-hand side, that's the standalone unit at the corner.
Sure. I think my question was, you had mentioned it drops 12 feet over 240 feet. And I was just curious where you're putting in steps or if it's ramped through your little paseo, and the difference in elevation, like finished floor elevations of your
Gotcha.
property. Yeah.
Actually, if we go to the next sheet, that might explain that a little better. And let's go to drawing 5 in the middle there, 5 and 6. So here you can see, so immediately at the carport, we would have some steps that go down, and then it would kind of gently slope past the open space. So that's kind of how we're taking up the grades and the building step with the topography.
Okay. Awesome. Answered that. And okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Whelan, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair 6. Mr. Riviera, you talked, are there some heavy dashed lines on unit 3, 4, and 1 on the plan? Are those the balcony overhangs?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. that-
Yeah, so
that
there's,
makes sense.
there's the bay window and then there's the kind of Juliet balconies that extend beyond that.
And you touched on this. Could you describe the materials on the balcony railing and balcony awnings that you have in
Sure.
mind?
Yeah, so just looking at the image that we have on the screen now, the awnings are seen as a metal roofing material, so like a standing seam or a small scale kind of square box rib. So those would be kind of a twist on the canvas awning, doing it in metal. Likewise, then the Juliet balconies are seen as having laser cut metal plate. So their overall form and massing would be very rectangular, but the perforations could be very decorative. And what you see now is sort of a placeholder pattern on those, but we're investigating more decorative ones.
I do. Thank you. And my last question regards the fencing. It appears there are two different types. There's a plaster wall and a wood wall. Is there a standard height for these walls? And can you talk about their use around the site and how they support your general site party?
Sure. Basically, the ones at the street perimeter would all be no higher than 42 inches. And again, I think they're there to create more of a sense of territoriality from the public right of way as you get closer to the dwellings. And then once you're on site, the actual fences around the private open spaces would be more in the neighborhood of 6 feet high for privacy reasons. So that's the basic kind of logic to those. Is the perimeter ones would be the lower scale, and the on-site ones for privacy at the private yards would be 6 feet.
Thank you. That's all of my questions, Chair Six.
All right, thank you. I have a few questions of my own. The material of the trellises would be a heavy wood?
Correct. The columns would be cast in place concrete using like a round sonotube form. And those would be like an integral color concrete. And then yes, the members would then be stained heavy timber.
Okay, then what you have pop outs, what we call in plan on the second floor. That looks like a pretty significant dimension. That's what, 18 or something?
18 inches, yes.
Okay. And then is the parkway improved along Ocean?
Well, I think once we get into the landscape design, we'll probably be looking at, some sort of improvements there. So that's TBD, I guess.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I did I? Yeah, I did public comment. Sorry. Okay, so back to the board on comments. Anybody willing to start? Mr. Wieland.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Overall, I admire the plan and the design of the buildings. They seem heavily influenced by Irving Gill's work, especially his Horatio Court in Santa Monica. I do think that the plan itself, if we could go to the plan itself, the relationship of the walls to the buildings and the resulting private spaces, I think could use some more development, that there's sort of an arbitrariness and frankly, some leftover spaces. This may flesh itself out when we see a landscape plan. the bike parking seems to be rather constricted and perhaps even a curb. There's only it appears to be 2 feet or so between building 5 and building 4 and the parking lots. And again, a landscape plan may bear this out, but it still seems that the bike parking is extremely difficult to access and could be better. And this, while I support the idea of a paseo, the private courts or private patios seem to interrupt what could be a really uniting public space. Other than that, it's a very good plan, and I can support it and look forward to its future submissions to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wieland. Others? Ms. Anderson?
I too support it. I like the fact that they looked at breaking up the buildings, and I also like the idea of the paseo. I think that's a nice idea. I do think that this site plan does not take advantage of the sun angles to the most that it can, and that your 2-story buildings are going to provide more shadow on your common open space and on the ADUs. I personally think it could benefit the project to bring the ADUs to the south. Anyways, that's just a thought, and bring the common open space, even though they talked about it being more private. I feel like that's more of a public space since they have their own private spaces. Otherwise, I think adding some finished floor elevations will be helpful. And that I'm sure that'll come with the stormwater and all the landscape as well. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Others? So I'll add my comments. I think it's a great plan. I really like it. I think that this is shows that there's a lot of space and flow from between buildings. It's not overbuilt, and I think that site plan. I concur slightly with Mr. Wieland. Maybe there's a way to do the walkways so they flow around, or knock some of the edges off of some of these open yard walls to curve them, curve them around and flow it a little better. Maybe that's all it would take. I like the architecture. I think in this point, I'm especially with and the Irving Gill language that you're, inspired by. I think less is more, and I would caution on the bright colors and very contrasty tiles that you're proposing. Maybe there's some more subtleness there, and maybe the balconies are, the one language that goes back to a very traditional. So I would say less is more, and take advantage of the, I think, very nice massing and forms that you've developed here. So with that, I think that I'll just, for the sake of time, say that this, give this project good, indefinite continuance to the hearing, the staff officer in regards to its very positive design and site planning, and support it wholeheartedly. I don't think there's any specifics that we need to address for the staff hearing officer is there? I don't think. So we could leave it with, well, let's see, is there any, one board member, another motion would be one board member would like to see the common open area more situated to the southern or the sun side of the property, and the lower 1 stories against the street. And one board member felt that more refinement for the flow of the pedestrian pass through the project in relationship to the walled patio should be studied, as well as more access to the bike storage area. Have I missed anything, kids? All right, so I will propose that as a motion. Do I have a seconder?
Second the motion.
Yes, Mr. Wieland. So we have a motion, a call for a vote.
All right, thank you. I'll start with Vice Chair 6.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Mr. Black?
I
You're
think you
muted.
might be muted.
Sorry, yes.
Thank you. Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
I don't see Mr. Olson.
yeah, I don't see him in the meeting, so I'll go ahead and move on to Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good project.
Very.
So with that, we'll move on to our last item of the evening, which is
Second to last.
oh shoot. Okay.
And we'll see if we can get
How are we doing on time?
Mr. Olson back. So the third item was supposed to start at 4:15 and it is 5 o'clock now.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
So
Let me read this real quick, get my stuff out of the way. This is item number 3, 210 South Voluntary Street, a continued item. Project design approval is requested. The project consists of demolition of an existing single-family residence and garage and construction of a new multi-unit residential development. The new unit would include 9 rental units pursuant to the city's AUD incentive and the state density bonus program. One of the units would be designated for very low income households. The average unit size would be approximately 612 square feet, 5 on-site vehicle parking spaces, including 1 accessible, and 9 long-term bicycle storage spaces are proposed. The parcel is zoned RM and its general plan designation is medium density residential, 15 to 27 dwelling units per acre allowable. The proposed density would be 36 dwelling units per acre, which is allowable in the state's density bonus program. The project is here for design approval and requires compliance with the project compatible findings and urban design guidelines. The project was last reviewed October 4th. Is our applicant here?
Yes, good evening, Vice Chair 6 and board members. Perhaps staff needs to upgrade our architect Dylan Chappelle to a presenter. I haven't seen him on here yet. We also have our landscape architect Natira Jones available for questions. We take a look at the meeting minutes from the last review. We're going to focus our presentation this evening on those items that we heard last time. And we look forward to your comments and questions.
All right, I don't have a time ticker on my screen, so I will trust that your presenters will be brief given our time.
So after the Vice Chair 6, after the minutes, we just review the minutes so I can start the timer on my end.
Yes, thank
I'll
you.
remind you.
Okay.
Maybe at a 10-minute and 15.
All right, so last time.
And Ms. Jones, all of your panelists are up promoted as well. Cool. I see them. Okay.
Vice Chair 6, after the minutes, review minutes, so you can start the timer on my end. I'll remind you. So don't go.
I'm getting very poor audio here. So I will assume that I'll just quickly read that the comments were to study the entrance sequence and the porch and the street side. And so it appears less like an add-on. Further study the scale of the windows to be more in character with a bungalow style. The future site plan shall show the location of adjacent buildings in relationship to the proposed project. Study providing additional planted areas in the northeast corner of building B adjacent to trash closure. The preliminary comments for compatibility analysis were stated. And so there you have it, if we could get the presentation. And focusing on these, in particular on these comments.
Mr. Six, this is Leon, and
yes.
I've lost contact. But I've joined.
You just cut out, so hopefully we can get you back in here as the applicant is presenting.
Vice Chair 6, it looked like he was joining in on the phone. We'll work to get him back, but
Okay.
let's just continue on without.
Yes, thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Super. So yeah, the first comment, this page is fine. If we look at the elevation at the top of the page, you can see previously there were some columns on the front porch. We've removed those columns per your guys' comment with some knee braces. I think it actually looks a lot nicer now. That was one of the first comments. Let me pull up the other one. One of the other ones, I believe, was also to show the adjacent structures on the site plan. So if we just scroll down a little bit and out, you'll see that we show all the adjacent structures there on the site plan. If you want to scroll over to the landscape page, you can see that there was a comment about adding additional landscape by the trash enclosure. And that was also done. I don't know if that's shown clearly there. There's also a color rendered site plan, I believe, as well, but it
it looks like perhaps our applicant presentation with the color rendering wasn't uploaded, but if needed,
Okay.
we can ask staff for that.
That was my question. I've seen, you seem to have like the plans and then also the applicant presentation. So will we just be staying in the applicant presentation this whole time?
that's fine. I mean, I think you could see the planting.
Just to clarify, the black and white landscaping, it was that 2 or 3 foot strip along the bed wall of that one unit down the driveway?
Correct. It was essentially what you would see if you look down the driveway. There it is right there.
So that was the response to that comment, correct?
Correct.
All right.
And then one of the other comments was that I believe some of the windows were a little bit out of character. So those had all been reduced throughout the building to be more consistent.
Can we briefly scan the elevations to see that fact?
Let's look at the elevation. So you can kind of see on the bottom right, I think that was what we were talking about in the previous presentation. A lot of those second story windows were a little bit larger, and they were not all single hungs. So those have all been changed.
So if I remember correctly, all these windows were the taller types, and you've shortened them around the bed walls on either side?
Correct. Any ones that didn't need to be egress windows, I made a little bit smaller.
I get it. Okay. All right. Very good.
And if I'm not mistaken, does that address all the comments?
Yep. Let's see.
We might want to go back to the other plan sheet. Was there a different set of elevations, Dylan, for the front building that wasn't shown?
Yeah, if you want to go to A3.0, there's those also. There are two, right now I have two slider windows, which are just the bathroom windows. If there was a comment, there was additional sliders previously. Those are the only two that are sliders. They're high bathroom windows. I could make those double awning windows if you guys prefer.
Okay. Can we go back to the comments from last time? What was that sequence and entry sequence and front porch of the street side unit, so it appears less like an add-on? I can't remember what that was about.
It had some columns to it, and it was
okay. Yeah, bingo.
wasn't-
Okay, thank you. Can we see the side? Do you have a elevation showing the side of that resolution?
I think if you look at the upper right, south elevation, you can see it's just that front porch is on knee braces.
There you go. Okay. Right. All right. Thank you. So does that summarize your presentation?
That's all we have, unless you guys have any other questions.
All right. We'll get to that. So with that, we will open public comment. So if you would follow the screen with further assistance from staff if you wish to speak on this specific item.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Six. If any member of the public would like to speak on this item, please click the raise your hand icon and I can call on you to speak. While we wait, I can confirm that we did receive written correspondence from Rosa Lopez, which was distributed to the board before this meeting. I still don't see any raised hands, so I'll turn it over back to you, Vice Chair Six.
All right, thank you, Mary. So we'll bring it back to the board. And if we could put the presentation up on screen, and anybody who wishes to ask questions on this. And I assume that Mr. Olson is in connection with
This
us.
is Leon.
Yes.
This is Leon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Actually, I don't have a question. I'm just hoping that you could reconnect me through Zoom. I'm here on my phone.
Okay.
So,
well, we can hear your lovely voice, but not your lovely face. We can't see your lovely.
Thank you.
Okay, so.
Thank you.
All right, no questions from Mr. Olson, Mr. Wilson.
No question.
Wheeland, why am I having a problem with your name today?
Well, Mr. Wilson was the next door neighbor of Dennis the Menace, so I'll accept that. My questions are about the bike parking, Mr. Chappelle. It appears that a new development is a double-tiered bike storage locker in the stair of the second building. Is that correct?
Can we go to the appropriate plan on that?
Let's see.
I'm going to chime in here, Mr. Whelan. We received some comments from Public Works Transportation about that proposed bicycle locker specifically, and we have changed it because of the timing for calendaring this hearing and the status of our DART application. The next set of plans will have a different scenario and different bike rack locker. But when we submitted for this at this time, we still had this old locker. So it's not currently consistent with what will move forward and what Public Works Transportation has appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, because there is some disagreement on the drawings about locations of bike lockers and types of lockers. Perhaps my specific comment about this double decker was that it just wouldn't work. I mean, there's not enough room to get the bikes. Okay, enough said on that. Let's see. I think that was my only question. Thank you, Chair Six.
Yes, Dennis. Any other questions? I have one question. I think that the primary concern about showing the neighbor silhouettes was whether there was privacy issues, in particular, looking from the balcony of the north down to the up sheet, and looking down into the neighbor to the north. Did we have photographs, and perhaps other members could remind me, did we alleviate that concern by evidence and photographs?
Can I refresh of what I remember at the last meeting?
Yes, please.
So we did provide renderings and perspectives of the main concern was these two-story buildings to the south, I want to say.
Oh, yeah.
And so we did provide that information at the last meeting.
Hence you narrowed the windows.
That did come up, and that was one of the comments in regards to that. So that's.
But did we address the view from the balconies on the up sheet down to the neighbors on the up sheet?
I don't believe so, Mr. Six. I think that's the reason that you wanted to see the adjacent buildings on a site plan to verify the distance between that structure to the north and the proposed building in the rear.
Okay, but we do have significant trees that are planted there, no?
Correct.
Okay, and then our landscaper will tell us that those are adequate trees or appropriate trees for that area?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I think those are the questions. We have comments. What is this here for? Preliminary, correct?
PDA, Mr. Six.
PDA, yeah. Okay, so if board members could direct their comments on that level of review, appreciate it. Who's willing to go first? Yes, Miss Anderson.
I think it's ready for PDA pending just the updated to the bicycle racks, so we know what's going on there.
Okay, good. Okay. Any other differing views?
This is Leon. I also think it's ready.
All right, thank you, Mr. Leon. Mr. Olson, any other comments? Yes, Mr.
Chair Six. I would agree with both board members. I believe it's ready. Maybe I would add, since it was offered up by the applicant, changing those sliders.
Yes, good. Okay. So, Ms. Anderson, would you, being the first to support, would you want to make a motion for indefinite, for PDA?
Or I move that this project Do we want us to come back to full board, or do you want it to go to consent? Okay, I will.
I think it should come to full board.
Okay. I move for indefinite continuance to full board for and to receive project design approval with the following comments: that the slider windows be changed to awning windows, and that the plans reflect the updated bicycle racks. And then do we need to go through the project compatibility analysis?
Yes.
Okay. All right, number 1. The design of this project is consistent with design guidelines applicable to this location of the project within the city. 2, it's compatible with the architectural character of the city and neighborhood. 3, it is appropriate in size, mass, bulk, height, and scale for this location in the neighborhood. Number 4, there are no adjacent landmarks or historic resources that we know of. Number 5, it does not affect public views of the ocean or mountains. And 6, it has appropriate amount of open space and landscaping.
I'll second that. So we have a motion on the floor.
All right, I can go ahead and take a roll.
Excuse me, hold please, Mr. Whalen.
Yes, I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify the motion that reflect an updated bike parking plan.
Okay,
That's fine.
so noted. So now we have a revised motion. Mary?
All right, I'll start with Vice Chair 6.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes.
Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to our last item of the night, 520 East Yananolly Street.
I
This
think
is
there's a 10-day appeal period for that one.
excuse me?
I think there was a 10-day appeal period, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. On item number 3, there is a 10-day appeal period. This approval can be appealed to the city council, and for further information, contact the city clerk. Yes, for number 4, 520 East Yananolly. This is a continued item. Project design approval and final approval is requested. This project consists of demolition of 4 existing buildings totaling 2,463 square feet, including electrical equipment contained therein, and construction of 5 new electrical buildings totaling approximately 4,201 square feet, a new waste gas flare, stormwater redemption infrastructure, a new utility infrastructure for the existing wastewater plant. The project has been designed to replace or enhance existing El Estro Water Resource Center plant operations while not increasing overall plant capacity. New buildings are not meant for human occupation except for maintenance of equipment. 8 trees are proposed for removal, as well as 4 parking spaces to accommodate the new buildings. Staff hearing officer approved of the development plan, and a coastal development permit was granted on August 25th, 2021. So project design and final approval is requested. Project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis, urban design guidelines, outdoor lighting guidelines, and staff hearing officer resolution 04021. Project last reviewed on September 8th. So is our applicant here?
Yes, Vice Chair Six, members of the board.
And could you pronounce your last name for us?
Yes, my name is Philip Maldonado.
Maldonado.
I am a supervising engineer here with the city. And let's see, Will, if you can promote Christopher Kindle and David Crawford, who are also here with me today to answer questions.
Promoting them now, and then I'm also pulling up some meeting materials. So give me a second.
Absolutely.
Yes. Mr. Russell, did we have comments from last time?
Yeah. Yes. I'm like trying to pull them up, but there we go. Hold on a second.
So last time, the general mass bulk scale current design of the proposed structure was acceptable. The board has concerns about removal of landscaping along Ayananali in order to construct the project, and would like to see additional landscaping and landscape design provided to screen these new structures. Any details shall match the existing buildings. The board found compatibility analysis were generally met at that time. And so if the board members and the applicant could focus in on those comments, especially in your presentation. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Chair Six, that is what I did. And Mr. Russell, if you could bring up the PowerPoint presentation, I'll just walk through that. Excellent. Well, hello. Thank you again. We are here today to present on the El Estero Water Resources Center Electrical Distribution Renewal Project. The site is located at 520 East Yananali Street. Next slide, please. Through this presentation, just I want to review the project description to remind the board of what was previously discussed and how the project is generally consistent with the zoning ordinance and can follow through with the recommendations today. This, of course, is the second review. It was continued to the Planning Commission by the board in 2020. Next slide, please. Now, just to start off with, we'll take a look at where the site is located. As previously identified, El Estero is located at 520 East Yananali Street, situated between Highway 101 to the north and the Pacific Ocean to the south. It resides in the appealable jurisdiction of the coastal zone. The vicinity map on the left highlights the site in yellow and shows the general location of the site within the city. The location map on the right shows these same yellow highlighted parcel boundaries and identifies Yananali Street to the north, or the upper portion of the map. To the west or the left of the map is Garden Street, and to the east or right side of the map is Calle Cesar Chavez Street. Next slide, please. As stated on this slide, the goal of the project is to eliminate the risk of failure at one of the city's most critical pieces of infrastructure. El Estero manages and treats all of the city's municipal wastewater and produces all of the city's recycled water. The electrical system touches all aspects of these processes, replacing this aging electrical distribution system, improving redundancy and eliminating single points of failure will help ensure continued operation for years to come. Next slide, please. Now, as you discussed, Vice Chair 6, the project will demolish 4 existing electrical buildings on the site, 5 new electrical buildings, a new waste gas flare stormwater remediation, and the utility infrastructure will be constructed. The project has received approval of the coastal development permit and development plan following the staff hearing officer's review. Next slide, please. This project is a renewal of the existing facilities and will not expand the existing use. Yeah, next slide, please. Now here's a view of the site plan. The renewed system will be constructed in parallel with the existing system. To accomplish this, 5 new electrical buildings will be constructed. These new buildings are identified on this map in red. Power will be transferred to this new system after it is completed and tested. Once operations are functioning on this new system, the existing electrical buildings can be demolished. The existing buildings are identified on this map in orange. A portion of the connected wiring will be routed through an above ground conduit along the western side of the site, and a new waste gas flare will be installed. The board was presented the project September 2020. The project was continued at that time. One commented request was to update the presented renderings of the new buildings along the north side of the site to represent the anticipated view from Yananali Street. An additional concern was for the screening in this area. The following slides will present these views along with the planned landscape update. The buildings will be presented from the perspective of standing on Yananali Street. Next slide, please. Now, this is the first view of the new 12 kilovolt power building. On the left is the existing view, and on the right is the rendered view. As shown, the new building profile will end below the height of the existing buildings and is well screened by the existing fence and landscaping. And up on the right-hand side, you can see the arrow designating which building this is on that site plan. Next slide, please. The second view is of the 4 kilovolt power building. This building is slightly more prominent, but remains below the sight lines of the existing building and is fairly well screened by the fence and landscaping. This view also shows the close proximity of these 2 buildings on the northwest corner of the site. Next slide, please. And this third view, third and final view, is of the new substation number 1 building. Once again, on the left is the existing view, and on the right is the rendered view of the new building. Next slide, please. Now, the board did voice concerns about landscaping along Yananali Street with specific attention to screening of the new buildings, especially in the this northwest corner of the parcel. The exhibit on this slide is taken from the landscape plan for this project. All of the new plantings highlighted here are highlighted in green. The northwest corner of the parcel was confirmed to have space for additional plantings for screenings. And the development plan review actually requires replacing the juniper trees that are removed by the new buildings along the north side of the parcel, which you see here in red. Guided by the use of these trees for planting, the locations identified are planned for the new trees that will be used for screening. And next slide. That concludes what we wanted to present today in response to the questions, to the comments that you had from 2020, and would like to take any questions you have at this point. And as I said, with me today is Chris Kendall, who is the principal engineer and design lead with Brown and Caldwell, and David Crawford, who is principal architect and came up with the landscape plan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Maldonado. So with that ending of the applicant's presentation, we'll open it up to public comment. If there's anybody from the public who would like to speak on this project specifically, please get in, follow the screen and get further assistance from staff. Mary?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Six and board members. So at this time, I don't see any members of the public in attendance for this meeting. And we did not receive any written correspondence, so I'll turn it over back to you, Vice Chair Six.
All right, thank you. So with that, we will close the public portion of the meeting and bring it back to questions from the board. Do we have any questions? So David, did I see your hand raised?
Yes, thank you. I wasn't clear. Are you proposing some additional screening, or did you feel, it sounded like what was there, what's existing is adequate for screening from Yanonali? Is that true? We're not proposing anything new?
There is, we are required to replace the trees that are removed somewhere on site. And we did take a look at that entirety of the screening and found some areas where additional screening could be placed. And so using those, the same type of tree, we're filling in on that northern boundary with Yanonali Street.
And so what are the specific plant materials that you're proposing then? Is it just juniper trees? There's no understory of secondary screen shrubs or anything like that? Would that
let
be?
me, I think I'd defer to Mr. Crawford, might be able to give a better description of the landscaping in that area.
Sure, that's absolutely correct. The intent was to use just the juniper tree at this point in time.
Can we go back and look at those photographs again, just of the screening area from off of Yanonali? Is that possible?
Mr. Russell?
Yeah, one moment. It quit on me. Which
So I think those, both this one, the first, the one before and the one after. David, go ahead.
Okay, and then you've got quite a few shrubs, I guess, that don't look like they're mature yet too. So more on the ground level. So, okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
All right, very good. And then any other questions? So I have I think, Mr. Maldonado, we reviewed in detail, and in my review prior to the meeting, confirmed that all the materials on the new buildings match the old existing, the pre-formed, not pre-formed, but formed concrete and so forth. So I think we're happy with the matching of the buildings. And just your presentation here is just to make sure if we're giving final that the new trees, the junipers and so forth are integrated into the final drawings. Is that correct? To what we see is a background of, can we go to that plan that shows the replacement area of the junipers? I think 2 sheets down from here. One more. One more. Yeah, so this is the actual working drawing that we will approve, but only augmented, Mr. Maldonado?
Correct. I just took the snippet of the specific area, but this is of the landscape plan that is in the plan set.
And you have instructions and sizes of these juniper trees on your plans?
Yeah, Mr. Crawford, yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. All right. So does anybody care to make a motion? I think this is here for final. So I will volunteer to make a motion for simply final approval as submitted.
Second,
That was who?
Leon Olson.
Leon, seconded by Mr. Olson. So we have a motion on the floor.
All right, I can go ahead and take the roll call vote. I'll start with Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yeah. Yes.
Board Member Black, I think you might be muted.
Muted.
Yes.
All right, Board Member Noon,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, folks, for your fine presentation. And that being the final item on the agenda, we will close the ABR for this date, whenever it is, the 10th of January. So good night.
Night.
Thank you, Mr. Six.
Yep.